Hello, this is Randy. Thank you for joining me for Brain Break with Randy and Keith. Again, Keith is not able to be here, but I'd like to tell you about how I got involved in a rather unique service. I had been asked by my church to become a scout leader. These were for older boys, what were called explorers back in the day for the Boy Scouts of America, boys 16 and up. And one boy was recently moved into the area. And try as we might, we didn't have much influence on him. And long story short, he went to a concert, but not to attend the concert, but rather to create havoc in the parking lot. And the police caught him breaking into, I don't know how many cars they caught him breaking into. This was years ago, but somehow they had all the evidence on him and he couldn't get away. So he went to jail, and his folks finally were able to get his parents were not well to do, but they were able to convince the judge that they had a safe place and would keep tabs on him. And so the judge gave him a very stern warning. I was there for this warning, as was our ecclesiastical leader. And he said, "I expect you to go to church every week. You'll be back in 13 weeks. And I expect you to go to church every week, and I expect you to go to scouts every week." And this young man nodded his head and said he would, and he was released to the custody of his parents. Make a long story short, even though I called him twice a week, Sunday morning early, and then again on the night we met, which I believe was Tuesday, but it might have been Wednesday, I couldn't get him to come to any activities, and he definitely didn't come to church either. And it was terrifying me because I had talked to a friend of mine who was in the FBI and was familiar with this judge. And this judge wasn't a man who suffered fools lightly. So what we did, I was basically subpoenaed to attend his sentencing, as was the ecclesiastical leader. And we had to say that while we had done all we could to get him to come to our meetings, he chose to attend a couple times on Sunday with his family, but he left before the services really began and did whatever he did. Whether he went and, bought soda at the local convenience store, I don't know. But it was disappointing that I had to give that report to the judge, and then the ecclesiastical leader had to do the same, in all honesty. And that young man was sentenced to go to Huntsville, a very harsh prison in Texas. He was barely 18. Now, he was a big boy, but he was still a boy. And to make a long story short, he didn't survive a week in Huntsville. He was killed in the shower, beaten to death by other inmates. And I was horrified. I was sickened, saddened. And it really opened my eyes. Now, before this young man was able to get out on his own recognizance, I had been asked to become a prison chaplain because they didn't have one for our church in the El Paso area. And I said I would, just so I could go visit this young man, because I was going down once or twice a week and waiting to go see him while he was in jail. And it was a pretty big time commitment, but that was the commitment I'd made to these boys. And even though I didn't know him very well, I wanted him to know I cared about him and wanted him to be happy and healthy. Now, as most teenagers, he thought he knew more than the rest of us. And it was kind of sad. But as a prison chaplain, I got to meet with men in New Mexico and Texas, including a federal penitentiary, 2 state penitentiaries, and El Paso County Jail. and provide service to these men for our church. And a lot of them had problems. They came from good families and yet made mistakes. And so a lot of times I was writing letters. Now, this is before computers, and I'm writing letters to families trying to explain what's happening. A lot of the families didn't even know where their son was because their son was too embarrassed to tell them his status and that he'd been arrested for breaking this or that law. And sometimes that was painful for families. In fact, I'm sure it always was, but sometimes they got back together and other times they did not. But it was a real eye-opening experience because I was a very young man. I was 26, 27 years old. And I was helping men, oftentimes older than myself, navigate problems that I hadn't even thought about having yet because of their being in prison and their wives being on welfare or looking for other help to try and keep a roof over their heads while the breadwinner was in prison. It was a great experience. I'll tell another story a little later on about when we moved back to Arizona and I was looking to get involved in the prison ministry or prison service again. And what happened there, it's a little comical. But I want to thank you for listening to this story and realize that there is nothing more important than taking care of our families and making sure that they work hard and are not doing stupid things because someone else said that they could do it. And I'll go into more about that later. But I want to thank you for watching Brain Break and encourage you to like and subscribe so we can put more content out there. And please feel free to tell your friends about us. We appreciate your support. Thank you so much.